Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last of our National Science Week webinars. My name is Fred Nucifora, and I will be your host this afternoon in this webinar that's all about our citizen science program, Eye on the Reef. But before we formally get into this afternoon's webinar, though, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are all gathered today and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as the holders of their storylines, their customs, and their aspirations for the future. And it's my genuine hope that we can all walk softly together on our journey to reconciliation. So welcome again, everyone, to our National Science Week seminar. It's been a real busy week of seminars, and this is the last of it. And I guess we've saved the best till last. So I've got two of my friends here today, Ryan Ramasamy and Jen Dryden. Welcome, Ryan. Welcome, Jen. Ryan and Jen are key contributors and managers of the Eye on the Reef program, and they're here to tell us a little bit more about that today. Now, a little bit of housekeeping before we dive right into the webinar. Down the bottom of your screen, if you hover down the bottom, you'll see a little Q&A tab. So if you'd like to ask a question, go down to the Q&A tab, hover over it, click on it, and then type your question in. And then we'll be able to see that question come through and we'll ask it to one of the panelists. And also, if you'd like to share this webinar with your friends later on or watch other webinars that have occurred this week, you can go to the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority's YouTube channel, where all of these webinars will be loaded for you to enjoy with your friends and family later on. So thanks again for joining us, and let's dive into this webinar about citizen science. So Ryan, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Thanks, Fred. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Ryan. I am an education officer here at the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. So my job is to educate the public about matters that go on about the Great Barrier Reef and how we protect it. And one of my side jobs is, as Fred was mentioning at the start, being one of the managers in the Eye on the Reef database that we'll be talking about today.
Excellent, Ryan. And Jen, before we get into the serious questions, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Fred. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Jen Dryden. I work in the Field Management Program at the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. And the Field Management Program is a joint partnership between GBRMPA and the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service. So we work on the day-to-day management of the marine park. And we do everything from, compliance enforcement right through to conservation actions on the reef. But my role is as Reef Health Coordinator. So I'm really interested in looking at the short-term changes in reef health that we're seeing out there, and also early warnings of any reef health impacts. So yeah, I keep an eye on that in the short term, sort of what's happened over the last, say, 12 months or so, and then look at the predictions for the coming few months.
Well, I reckon we're going to have lots and lots of questions to ask you two this afternoon. They sound like really, really interesting jobs and ones that are very important to managing the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. So Ryan, your first cab off the rank this afternoon. Can you tell us a little bit about the different Eye on the Reef programs that are available for people?
Not a problem, Fred. So what I'll do, I'll share my screen. All right, so the Eye on the Reef program is the official citizen science program and science for management program for the Great Barrier Reef. If you've been tuning into our webinars through the week, you may have seen this graphic already to show the massive size of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. If we were to just talk about its immense size, we could roughly fit the countries of Italy or Japan or Germany into our marine park. So it is a very vast and biodiverse area. Now, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park has experienced a range of impacts, increasing over time. If we take our time machine and go all the way back to the 1970s, you had risks such as oil drilling and limestone mining. And as we move through time, other stresses on our marine park have become evident. Things like our crown of thorns outbreaks, a lot of fishing related issues, and currently we've got things like climate change and coastal development having a big impact on our marine park. So with Great Barrier Reef Marine Park being so big, it's really hard for us to keep an eye on it. There's only so many of us that work for the authority. So we rely on other partners such as AIMS, the Australian Institute of Marine Science, with their long-term monitoring plan to let us know what's going on the reef. But they only do a small section of the reef. So there's these big gaps in between that we don't know what's happening. And that's where the Eye on the Reef program comes in. We rely on citizen science to fill in the gaps. Now, this picture that you see here is of a scallop, and those blue dots that you see are the scallop's little eyes. Now, those eyes don't produce really clear images, but they can still sense moving objects. So it's a great acronym for our Eye on the Reef, because even though the data we get may not be perfect, those simple observations that everyday people put into our management systems can be so important for people like Jen to do her job to make management decisions for the better of our marine park. So a study published a couple of years ago showed that marine science, citizen science, in the marine sphere is becoming increasingly popular because it not only offers an educational experience for people that do it, but it's also a factual learning, and it empowers people to take control of their patch and learn and experience what it is on the reef. And it's really, really good for marine science and conservation. So the vision for the Eye on the Reef program is to be the world's best stewardship-based reef health assessment and monitoring program that we build stakeholder capacity and also deliver accurate information directly through to the managers of the Great Barrier Reef. Now, the Eye on the Reef program is a way for everybody to be involved. You don't have to be a scientist to tell us what's going on the reef. You could be a fisherman out on the weekend, letting us know what's going on, or it could even be your child that has their mobile phone with them. I don't think any kid out there doesn't have a smartphone nowadays, and they love taking photos. So why not take photos to help us learn what's going on? The Eye on the Reef program has 4 different tools, which encompasses pretty much everyone. We've got 2 professional tools and 2 public tools or community tools. So what I'm going to do over the next 5 minutes or so is just go through each of these 4, and we'll start at the base, our sightings network that anybody can do regardless of experience on the reef. So the Eye on the Reef app, you may have heard about this through our webinars earlier this week. It's free to download on your Android or iPhone. And it's a little app that you can use to tell us what's going on. If you see a cool animal, like a turtle or whale, a shark, or even if you've gone fishing and caught a little coral trout, before you put it back, take a snap, let us know where you've caught that animal, where you've seen that animal, and its size. And that information, such as where you found it, how big it is, could tell us a story of what's happening out on the reef. Now, the app has been going since 2007, and we've got over 19,000 sightings that have been logged through our app. So a couple of the cool sightings I've just found looking at our public website, I've pulled up how many humpback whales we've seen in the marine park since we've had the app going, and we've had over 4,000 sightings of humpback whales. And that graphic, you can actually see where the whales have been sighted in the marine park. Same thing for whale sharks. Who knew you could find whale sharks on the Great Barrier Reef? You always hear of sightings of whale sharks over in Ningaloo, but we've got them here on the Great Barrier Reef, and people have been logging their sightings of whale sharks as well. Now, the last thing down there is the leatherback turtle. Now, these guys are very rare to be seen because they're usually found out in the outer reef, just in the open ocean. Very rare to see a leatherback turtle, but we still have logged sightings of leatherbacks. And they're really, really important, as Jen may talk about later. We want to know where these animals are and what they're doing at certain times of year. And that helps us make our management decisions. Going up from our sightings app, for those with a little bit of reef experience, as a community tool, we've got our rapid monitoring survey. Now, this is a quick 20-minute swim. You take off the area and you log through a little tally important species that you find in your area. Things like coral trout, clownfish, turtles, and sharks, and crown of thorns. They're really, really important indicator species for the health of the reef, not only for a tourism and an economic standpoint, but also for an ecological and reef health standpoint. So that's our rapid monitoring tool. The second part of that is to give us a benthic survey and let us know what the bottom of that reef is looking like, whether there's heaps of coral or not. Any information is good information. Moving on to our professional tools, firstly, we've got Tourism Weekly. Now, this is a tool specifically designed for the tourism industry. People on these tourism operations, they go out to the reef every day. So the Tourism Weekly survey is designed for these guys to go swim the same path every single week and build up a trend data set. And that lets us know what's going on. And as Jen was saying earlier, it could provide some early warning for what's happening out in the reef. The last professional tool is our Reef Health and Impact Survey. Now, this is usually done by scientists or highly trained tourism operators or highly trained members of the public. Now, this is scientific methodology used to get a really descriptive, to describe what's really going on the benthos. We're breaking down those categories of the algae, the types of coral, and the types of disturbances that you see on the reef. So we've got the AIMS long-term monitoring program using this to help fill in our gaps and those highly trained people as well. So how do you become one of these trained people? We here at the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, we provide online training. So you can get in contact with us and we can provide you with some online training and coach you through how to get yourself experience to provide data to us to help our management. We also provide in-water training sessions for tourism operations to train up their crew to know what factors to look out for on their patch of reef. And we also do training sessions for our Reef Health Impact Survey because we want to make sure the data is really, really good and of high quality. So since the program began, we've had over 43,000 reef health surveys submitted, and as I said earlier, over 19,000 sightings from over 1,200 reefs. Now, we've trained over 700 people to date, and we hopefully will train a few more if you're interested after today. So the last thing I really want to say is citizen science is for everyone. The Eye on the Reef program can be done by anybody out there, whether you've had no experience or you've been to the reef all your life. So all I'm going to say is we need you. Help us out. Download the Eye on the Reef app. Get in contact with us if you want to be trained in our survey tools. So that is the Eye on the Reef program. Oh, Fred, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks very much for that overview of Eye on the Reef and what it's all about. It's a very comprehensive overview of how everyone, anywhere, can actually contribute to the Eye on the Reef program. Now, Jen, data everywhere. What do we use all of that data for?
Oh, so many things, Fred. So many things. Where do I even start? This data is crucially important for us. In order to make informed decisions about the management of the marine park, we need as much data as possible. Now, of course, the information about the long-term trend in reef health that we get from the Australian Institute of Marine Science is critically important to that. But on top of that, we also need to know what the current reef health status is, and also have early warnings of impending reef health impacts. And in order for that to happen, we need really good spatial coverage, so surveys from all throughout the marine park, and we also need good temporal coverage. So we need these surveys and this information coming in all the time, not just specific times throughout the year. Because as Ryan mentioned, organizations like AIMS, who do their long-term monitoring program, those are very detailed surveys. There's a lot of expertise that goes into doing those and a lot of time and resources. So they're only able to get out and do those reefs maybe every 1 or 2 years. And that's where the Eye on the Reef program comes in, because it enables many people to get out to multiple different locations all the time and just provide that complementary information to help us build the proper picture of what's really going out on the reef. So I'll just share with you my screen, and you'll be able to see the database that the Eye on the Reef information goes into. Okay, so when you send your Eye on the Reef info into us, whether it's your Tourism Weekly survey or your Rapid Monitoring survey, even your sightings, they go into the Eye on the Reef database. And this is just a snapshot of what you can see in the Eye on the Reef database. This is the dashboard. And we can use this dashboard to interrogate that information in so many different ways, depending on what we're interested in at any given time. The primary things we're interested in, obviously, are the reef health impacts, so bleaching, disease, predation, damage, things like that, but also what's the state of the coral cover. And we can run a number of different reports targeted around those different impacts, but then we can also interrogate the database in any way that we want. And importantly, this data is also available to be provided to other people, so we can share it through Creative Commons with researchers. Even if people are interested in seeing their own data, we can definitely share that back to them just to complete that loop. So I know that there's been people wondering about how their information is used and where it's going to. It's all housed in this database, and we can definitely share it with whoever's interested in using it. Now, one of the things we can do from this database is pull out maps to summarize the data, and we can also export it as Excel spreadsheets as well. I'll pull up a couple of Google Earth maps to give you an idea of some of the ways that the data contributes to our operational planning during summer, and also helping us keep an eye on how reef health events are progressing. So this map that you're seeing at the moment, this is from last month, July. And the white dots that you can see here are from the AIMS Marine Monitoring Program surveys that were run in July. And they're all in the inshore wet tropics area. So just to give you an idea of how Eye on the Reef contributed during the month of July, I'll bring up some of those surveys as well. And this map is now showing you the locations of our reef health and impact surveys in green, the Tourism Weekly surveys in dark blue, we've got rapid monitoring in the light blue, and also sightings of various incidents such as bleaching or disease. You can see that really complements where the AIMS surveys were undertaken. So we've got a lot of surveys from the offshore region here, and also some from the central and even the southern Great Barrier Reef. So that's been really good to just increase that situational awareness for us. Now, just to give you an idea of how this was useful during summer this year, because we all know that there was that mass bleaching event during summer. So here is February. Bear with me a second. Okay. Just for interest, this is February from at the start of this year. These are the AIMS LTMP surveys from February. And again, we can see that they were undertaken in this one management area. And this is when the sea surface temperatures really started to heat up. We were starting to get really concerned about what the situation was out on the reef. And while these surveys from AIMS were great, if we'd only had those, then we would have been none the wiser as to what was happening in the rest of the marine park. So I'll just add in the Eye on the Reef surveys now, and this is going to be pretty cool for you to see. This is our spatial coverage of the marine park based on the information from the Eye on the Reef network. And this was fantastic because, as you can see, we've got information from right up in the far northern reaches of the marine park right down to the southern And that includes reef health and impact surveys, not only by our rangers, but also by our skilled tourism operators. And so many sightings as well. A lot of those were of bleaching, so really giving us an indication of how extensive that bleaching event was. And this was really important because this was prior to any of the aerial surveys being conducted. So we really relied on those aerial surveys to confirm the extent of the bleaching, but even before they happened, we had a really good idea of how bad that bleaching was, what the extent was based on purely from the Eye on the Reef surveys. So yeah, they're crucially important bits of the puzzle when building a picture of what's going on in terms of just the general situational awareness out there on the reef. And knowing this allows us to prioritize our resources. So it plays into the operational planning of what we're going to do next. Allows us to prioritize our resources and plan how we're going to communicate, what's happening on the reef and, what the next steps are going to be in responding to this incident. So,
That's excellent.
very important.
Really great. And I guess that last map there really hits home how important this citizen science is to us as managers of the Great Barrier Reef, for our situational awareness. As Ryan said as part of his talk, we're dealing with a place that's as big as Italy underwater, or
That's right.
if you're a sports fan, if you picture one football field, now think about 70 million football fields all underwater. And, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority and our partners at the Australian Institute of Marine Science and Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service and everyone else that are actively involved in monitoring and managing the reef, we simply can't be everywhere. And that's why the citizen science is so critically important to us as managers of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. Now, Ryan and Jen, just quickly now about a little bit about you two, right? What did you study at university to get you where you are today? Ryan, how about you first?
So, Fred, I studied a Bachelor of Biology for my undergrad at James Cook University. I then went on to do some postgraduate studies in marine biology, in particular research, and then I finished a master's in philosophy a couple of years ago at James Cook University as well.
Excellent. And Jen, how about you?
Yeah, I did a Bachelor's of Marine Science and Conservation Biology, and I actually then went on to do my honours year looking at turtles and how the rezoning of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park has increased the protection of the foraging areas and the nesting areas of the key different turtle populations.
Wow, so two quite interesting pathways to landing and working at the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. Now, we do have one question that's come in so far, and I think, Ryan, you might be able to help out with this one. What's the app I need to download? What do people have to look for when they're going to download the app?
Right, so you can find the app through the App Store on your iPhone and Android device. Just type in Eye on the Reef, and it should come up as one of the first results there. Now, the cool thing about the app, if you were listening earlier this week, is actually got our zoning maps as well. So if you're a fisherman, that's actually a really cool tool to have when you're out on your day out on the reef.
Yeah, it is an excellent tool to have while you're out on the reef. And speaking about the app and having it in your pocket, it's like having a little ranger in your pocket when you're out on the Great Barrier Reef. You know exactly where you are, you know what zone you're in. So that determines what activities you're allowed to do there in that particular place. But you can also lodge the amazing things you see on that day. Now, I'm going to ask this question to both of you because I know both of you have put sightings into the app before because you've spent a lot of time underwater. What's the coolest thing you've seen out there and loaded up onto the Eye on the Reef app? Jen?
God, putting me on the spot there. Recently it's been the whales, just whales everywhere. You know, that's been amazing to see. Um, I think just your average little everyday things like eagle rays. I love seeing them out in the marine park.
Yeah, cool.
Ryan's possibly got some cooler little critters that he's seen.
Well, I wish I was logging eagle rays and whales and things like that, but unfortunately, I've never seen a whale or an eagle. Actually, no, I have logged one whale, but I haven't got as much interesting stuff. I guess the coolest thing I've logged recently was the recovery of hard corals after the bleaching event earlier this year. So that shows that our Great Barrier Reef is amazingly resilient. And just information like that does go back and help our managers, doesn't it, Jen? Just the recovery as well.
That's right. That's super important to report. Even, you know, if you're seeing everything looks normal, then that's great. But let us know, because that's just as important as if you see an impact.
Yeah, that's a really positive point there from both of you. That you know, not the sightings isn't all about telling us where there's bad things happening. We want to know where there's really signs of amazing things happening on the reef. So you know, that's the beauty and power of the Citizen Science Network and this system, is it shows us when the reef needs a little bit of help in places, but it also shows us the strength and resiliency inside the reef and how it can definitely recover given the opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, Jen,
Fred, I'll just add there. Yeah, and that's also very important because the number of ways that we use this information, we want to know about the good and healthy spots, because that helps us prioritize maybe where we do things like reef restoration activities, where we're going to put in moorings and reef protection markers, and also, you know, where other projects can take place. So yeah, all of that's crucially important to that.
Okay, now panelists, now you're going to earn your money this afternoon. So we've got 3 questions here, logged and loaded. Cecilia would like to know, with the data you have presently, can you predict if coral spawning will differ from last year?
No.
Well, that was a very succinct answer. But we're close to spawning now, aren't we?
That's right, yes. So, but not based on the data I have currently. I wouldn't say that would help me to make any predictions. But yes, the conditions over the next couple of months will definitely.
And it'll be really interesting as well. Sorry, Jen. It'll be really interesting to see as well what ends up spawning, because science has shown after big disturbances like bleaching, some corals may take a little bit of time to get back to spawning. They've shown amazing recovery rates so far. So hopefully this year is going to be a good spawning. So let us know through your sightings on the app.
Yeah. And so the next question is, how do you reconcile the different data collection methods from transects and sightings when using the data to answer a question? So you get all this data from sightings, all this data from transects. How do you reconcile all that to answer the questions we need to know?
Yeah, that is a good question. And obviously we do have to treat the data from each different survey type differently. Different survey types will usually be done by people with varying level of expertise, and we absolutely recognize that. So we tend to use the data from, say, sightings and from the rapid monitoring surveys as more of trigger information. So if we get enough sightings that indicate, say, an instance of bleaching in an area, then that would trigger us to just take a closer look at that area, but we wouldn't necessarily base the status of reef health in that area, you know, solely on that information. So what we would do is usually be looking to do further site inspections if we've been really triggered by sightings or rapid monitoring surveys to go and to look at an area. As we sort of move up that pyramid that Ryan was showing you, our Tourism Weekly surveys and the Reef Health and Impact surveys, they require a bit more training and time and resources. So that's the data that we tend to look at a bit more carefully, and we'll really examine that when it comes in. We do a bit of quality control around it. And we also have triggers built into the database that alert us if any thresholds are breached based on that information. So it's really, we look at it all as a holistic package. So the data from the different surveys is treated differently, but still contributes to the overall picture of what we're seeing.
Thanks, Jen.
Sorry, Fred, just to add to what Jen was saying, with a couple of those tools like the Tourism Weekly, when it's done often enough, it creates an amazing trend that a long-term data set can give you. And that just helps people like Jen do their jobs to know if it reaches a certain level, this is probably what's going to happen next. So that trend data is also very important.
Thank you, Jen and Ryan. Now, I think Ryan, I think I'm going to put two questions together here, and you can answer them as one. So, do I still need the internet to use the app when I'm out on the water? And can I use the app to record things like pollution or damage from boats or oil slicks?
All right, so I'll answer the first question first. You don't need internet to use the app when you're out in the water. So what you can do is you can log your sighting, and your phone will actually store that information until you come back on land or get within range of some kind of data signal, and then you can log it there. So you can definitely do that. And another aspect of the app is we can log pollution, we can log waste that we find, so plastic pollution as well. So that can definitely be used for those kinds of impacts.
Excellent, Ryan. So Ryan and Jen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been so great having you as part of the webinar and chatting to you about the Eye on the Reef program and how we use it for management in the Great Barrier Reef. And I hope it's been good for our audience to learn a little bit about you both personally too, and how you got to become marine scientists and work for the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. You know, there's something, I just saw a news feed coming through that there was a blue whale sighted off Maroubra Beach in New South Wales. Now, what an amazing opportunity for everyone that's got the Eye on the Reef app that's venturing out into the marine park. Who knows whether that blue whale might just continue its journey up the coast and into the waters of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. And I guess the question is, will you be the next person to lodge that sighting into the Eye on the Reef system? Jen and Ryan, thank you again so much for your time this afternoon. Any final messages you'd like to give to everyone before we say goodbye?
I'd just like to add that, reiterate that every bit of information is important. So please get it in there and help us keep an eye on the reef.
Excellent.
Every bit, and everyone can do it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen and Ryan. And please, everyone, if you can see Jen's words on her backdrop, that's what we would like everyone to do when you can, and it's safe to do so. Get out and see the reef. We know you'll fall in love with it, and then do your little bits to help protect it, like lodging your Eye on the Reef sightings. Now, if you want to watch this again tonight and share it with your friends, or watch any of our other Science Week webinars, please go to the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority's YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone. It's been wonderful having you this afternoon. Bye-bye now.